the Department of Education had its own radio station. And any school that was within about 10 to 15 years old had the radio stations piped into the classrooms for appropriate programs. And they would put the World Series on the radio in the classroom if the teacher requested it.
Yeah.
Didn't have to smuggle in a radio.
Yes, in the 1964 World Series, which was, of course, the Cardinals and the Yankees. I was in high school then, and at Western Kentucky, which is Cardinal territory. So the teachers let us have the radios on then. So that was the first year the Cardinals won the World Series in my lifetime.
Mhm.
So that's a favorite memory of listening to the World Series in high school.
I've got one that probably, I don't know how this ever happened, but it did happen. I was in seventh grade in 1956 World Series when the Dodgers played the Yankees. And my situation was, I was seventh grade. We were the only seventh grade in our school in Laurinburg, North Carolina. And so they actually had our class in what was called the community building, where all the civic clubs met, like the Lions Club and the Rotary Club and things like that. And this friend of mine, Pat Calhoun, both of us, neither one of us ever got in trouble for anything. But Pat talked me into let our teacher, Ms. Cuthell, who was not a big disciplinarian, and she didn't hold grudges. He said, let's get caught talking, and then we'll get sent out in the hall. And so we can follow the game. These guys had the TV set on in the Rotary Club. Well, we're sitting on a bench. She caught us, told us, Pat, Francis, go outside and sit on the bench. So we went out there, and she closes the door. Well, about 3-4 minutes later, these men in town, small town, they see us. They said, Pat, Francis, you want to come over here and watch the game? So we go over there, and then they say, you want some iced tea, stuff like that. And then about half an hour later, 45 minutes later, Ms. Cuthell comes out the door looking for us. We're sitting there in the middle of the Rotary Club watching the Dodgers and Yankees. But again, she was so mild-mannered, she didn't really care. She just told us to come on inside.
Oh, that's funny. I will say that everybody, I'm sure, reacts the same way. The 1956 World Series. I know what happened. You don't know if it's going to be that game, but everybody.
Oh, yeah. Well, it wasn't Larson. It wasn't
Yeah.
the Don Larson game. I can't remember which one it was, but
That's
sometime between a Monday and a Friday.
There's some sports writer who wrote a great column years ago. He was in school when Larson was pitching his game, and he gets called to the principal's office. And you're thinking, oh, he's in trouble. And he gets to the principal's office, and the principal says, sit down. You're not going to believe what's happening. It was his dad, and his dad had been listening to the game the whole time, and he pulled him out of class so he could hear the end of it.
That's a good father.
If I may add one, and again, not to bring up the Mets, but it seems to be a popular subject here. 1989, October 17 was the day my wife and I got married in a hotel in New York. And there's also a Mets National League Championship NLCS series going on. And I had promised my wife, of course, even though she's a baseball fan too, and all that, we wouldn't interrupt the wedding for the game because it wasn't the final game of the series, and it wasn't yet the World Series. So we figured. Anyway, so at one point after the wedding, during the reception and all that, I go off to the restroom and I had to pass the coat check. And at the coat check, I found 2 or 3 of our friends, plus the coat check guy, all there huddled around. It must have been a radio or a small TV. I mean, this was 1999, so well before all the technology where you can carry a computer in your pocket and all. And they were following the game, so I was able to get a score. I can't remember what it was. I went back to the reception. And I told my wife what happened. I said, look, it wasn't me trying to find out. I just happened to pass by them. And she was very interested too. It was fine. So anyway, later that evening, afterwards, we had a little thing in our room with a bunch of our closest friends and all that. And so Rachel and I get up there, they already had gone into the room to kind of set it up for us. And they had the game on. So I figured we're all good. So anyway, the series continued, and then we went on our honeymoon in the British Virgin Islands. And again, this is before, cell phones all being all over the place and all. And this particular resort we went to had every morning they get a fax from the New York Times of just the big stories in the like a 1 or 2 page thing. And they delivered it to our breakfast tables in our honeymoon. And the Mets lost. I think it was the Braves, I want to say. I can't even remember. 1999, someone help me with that. But I remember thinking that's probably a good thing, because otherwise I'd be rushing to breakfast every morning on our honeymoon, tracking the Mets in the World Series. And that may have been too much. I'm not sure. So anyway.
That is always a fear in that. It's like if you schedule that fall wedding, not October. No, can't be getting married in October. That is definitely not going to happen. Too much risk involved. Not as much risk with the Mets as I would like for it to be, but still it's some risk. Well, I'm waiting on Jason to show up. So while we do that, let's see if we can talk about, since we have a good crowd, let's talk about the next one. I know that's often done at the end, but if I do it at the end, I'll forget. So do y'all, what's the frequency that is tolerable to you? Is monthly a fine rate? Everyone's invited to comment on that.
Depends on how many Mets fans are on the call.
Well, there's only 2 of us anyway. It's a narrow crowd.
I think monthly's good.
Does this kind of thing work for everybody? And people seem to like the time all right. I will say our meetings are longer than most ones. I might shorten it by half an hour just to free up the call line, because they only have 1 call line. So I might go, call it 2.5, because what happens invariably is noon, I start, people come in, we just chat around, mill around, waiting on the speaker. Speaker shows up. They're theoretically going to speak for 45 minutes, but invariably they're very interesting so far. And so it goes and goes and goes. And then Howard does trivia, and then we all go home. So that's pretty much the rhythm. Today's the 3rd. There's May 1st. Oh, I think I have to do something on May 1st. So either the 24th or the 8th. Is the 8th Mother's Day weekend? It almost has to be. Mother's Day weekend?
Yeah.
Mother's Day's the next weekend, doesn't it?
No, Mother's Day is always the second Sunday.
It's the 9th.
Yeah, that's right. It's the 9th. Yep.
But the 8th ought to work then. Is that good? Well, yeah. I can always host a call at my mom's if I have to go to my mom's. I get to go to my mom's. I mean, I've only seen her once in a year, so it's pretty rough. But I should get my 2nd vaccine in the next couple of weeks. She's already had hers. We're getting there. Even with the variants, we don't have to talk about that. So what else? So I'm just waiting on Jason right now, and I will set something up for May 8th. I will say when we do it further in advance, it's easier to get the lock because other people try to get it. And as the season picks up, more chapters will have more meetings. And that'll be good. I hope all of you know about the convention. Yes, it was canceled this year, but that was the right thing to do, because at the time, the vaccine rate was not where it has been. And there was no way people would be vaccinated. Plus, the dates we had were not that ideal. There was around Father's Day. And so by pushing it out another year, it will be our 50th, even though it's like the 52nd. But, we've really locked in with Baltimore on that. So we got a better hotel location, better hotel rates. Everything worked out better for us because.
Plus you'll double the attendance at the game then.
Yes, that would be another thing. We wouldn't, although I don't think by June, but late summer of this year, I wouldn't be surprised to see that there's more openings available. Here's Jason. And don't feel like you have to have your camera on at all times if that's something, you don't want to. It's like, I'm going to start eating my sandwich because I was late to lunch. I'll close that off. Jason, welcome. How are you today?
Okay, I had to unmute. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being had. We were really excited that you could make it. Obviously, I have a lot of familiarity with your work, and obviously, I always want to share that because it is so terrific. I do, you know, I don't know if y'all read the SABR notes, but it came out, and Jason emailed me and said, you know, the SABR notes said 3 o'clock. So I emailed it to Jacob. I said, I think our group knows it's at 12 all the time. So I emailed him, but I do wonder because some of our regulars aren't here, and I wonder if they think the time is wrong. Like I thought Keith is usually here.
I don't know. I might mention that I was in the Milwaukee chapter meeting, the Ken Keltner chapter, Wednesday night. They had the same situation where the time appeared as Arizona time.
Yeah, that's what happened to ours.
Yeah.
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 I don't know they missed many people, but it did. They talked about how, you know, there was a misleading statement made there in the calendar.
Yes.
I wasn't sure when I joined if I was 2.5 hours early, 3 hours late, or whatever, but it looks like I got it right. But in terms of the regulars being missing, I will say, you know, this is maybe the 4th time I've presented at a chapter, and they tell me usually my topic reduces attendance by about 50%. So if that's what you're seeing, you know.
Actually, I'm not seeing actually, I'm seeing different faces. So it's really the same number. We got like 4 new guys, new people coming in. Vernona was here last call. So the virtual has seemed to help us get a good attendance. So we've had 10 or 12 all the time. I'll start it. So Jason Schwartz, he's a member of the Chicago chapter. It's called the Emil Rothe chapter, and is the co-chair of the SABR Baseball Cards. So I'm sure that if you like baseball cards like I do, and over my shoulder, there's a card catalog that has baseball cards in it. But he's a long time baseball fan, card collector, and he's a big Hank Aaron, Roy Campanella, and Dwight Gooden fan. He's also a card artist. If you don't follow him on Twitter, you're missing out on some really exciting things that he does under Heavy J Studios. And he's raised more than $15,000 for charities like the Negro League Baseball Hall of Fame and all of the ones that you would expect during the pandemic. His stuff is sporting news, and Jason has written more than 50 articles at the SABR Baseball Cards. It's really the baseball card blog. Even if you don't love baseball cards, the stories associated with baseball cards is phenomenal. And y'all might recall that we've had Mark Armour on to talk about baseball cards. And he's a presenter and moderator at tons of SABR meetings, and he's really, really great to listen to because just as we saw with Carhart, somebody that's an expert in their field is just like to listen to. So welcome, Jason, and the floor is yours.
Okay, that's fantastic. Well, these are big shoes to fill in a couple of ways. Number one, my predecessor on the Baseball Cards Research Committee, in fact, was Chris along with Mark Armour. But boy, Ralph Carhart, that's a tall order to try to top that. I'll tell you what, I'll try to be half as good, but talk twice as long. And then I think that evens out, doesn't it, mathematically? So let me go ahead and share my screen. And here we go. Let's see. Can you all see Jimmy Fox and Carl Hubble?
Yes, I can.
Okay, fantastic. So here we go. I prepared a little something special. Get ready. You don't want to miss this. Let's see. There we go. That's my special effect. So anyways, I'm mainly here to talk about the SABR Baseball Card Research Committee, but I'll also talk about some other things that it kind of led me into. This is probably the most exciting slide of the presentation with special effects and everything like that. But let's see where we go from here. So the first question is, who is this guy? And I'm not talking about the hammer. I'm talking about the guy dressed like the hammer. So what I thought I'd do with just a selection of slides is introduce myself through some of my interests and some of my work. So card collector since 1978. the set that I really fell hard for was 1978 Topps. In 77, I bought literally one pack and got kind of hooked. And I think it must have been the end of the baseball season. So believe it or not, I didn't follow baseball at all, right? I just bought a pack of baseball cards and liked what was inside. But I think the season must have come to an end because by the time I'd saved up another 15 cents, translation, stole it from the little change thing in my mom's car. There were no more baseball cards. I think it might have been like, movies or, other kinds of things that came in packs. So I had one pack of 77, but 78, man, when those came out, that was all I cared about. I collected the set as a kid, and like a lot of people my age, at some point, all my cards ended up in the trash, and I recollected the set on its 40th anniversary in 2018. So not from packs though. Chris mentioned as well, I'm a Dwight Gooden fan, Dwight Gooden collector. So I'm going to make this part a little bit interactive, and this will be maybe shocking for some of you who collected in the 70s or maybe even earlier than that, or even the 80s. So what I'm showing here is the front page of a binder of my Dwight Gooden collection. And the collection only spans his playing career, meaning the final card would have been about 2001. The first card in here anyways, Major League card 1985. So about how many different Dwight Gooden cards do you think I have? And you can go ahead and type in the chat if you like. Oops, I don't want to give anything away here. Or I'll tell you what, can I figure out where the chat went?
The chat down the bottom.
Yeah, let's see. Oh gosh, I'm not, I think with my full screen, I'm not really seeing it. That's okay. I'll tell you what, think about it in your head or type it in your chat. I don't know what you type, but the answer is ballpark. Oh, now I found it. Ballpark about 700. So I remember, boy, it was, I think it might've been before the pandemic. I was on the SABRcast with Rob Nyer, and he was a card collector back in the 80s. He was in absolute disbelief that there could be 700 different cards of the same person, let alone someone who played ballpark 15 years, et cetera. And I went on to explain to him just what happened. And some of you may know there was kind of a proliferation of card producers in the late 80s and in the 90s. You started seeing these things introduced in the hobby, like here's this card of Dwight Gooden, but here it is with a green border, here it is with a red border, here's the gold border, the silver border, et cetera. I treat all those as different. And so sure enough, I'm at a bit over 700 cards. A fellow who I collect with, I think is at 1,100 different cards by now. And that's the largest Dwight Gooden collection that I know from his playing career. Now, if you go after his playing career, because Topps or some of the other companies continue to produce cards of players who are retired, then literally it might be 3,000, 4,000, but I don't really dabble in that area just because it's too crazy. Some would say 700 is crazy, but let's agree 4,000 is beyond crazy. Okay. Anyways, the guy who super collects Dwight Gooden just dropped off. I'm sorry about that. Okay, but here we go. The highlight of my collection, though, is my Hank Aaron collection. And so what I'm showing here, and this is framed on my wall in the basement, otherwise known as the Hank Aaron Suite, is Hank Aaron's complete career in baseball cards, 1954 to 1976. I've got some other cards that just don't fit the frame because it only holds 50. But in this display, you see all of his Topps base cards. You see his one Bowman issue from 1955. That's the third card shown. You see his all-star cards from Topps. You see some of the multiplayer combos, like he was on a card with Ernie Banks. You can spot that right around the very middle. He was on a card with Willie Mays. You can spot that pretty close to the middle as well. And then some less common issues, food issues, regional issues. The upper right hand corner is one of his tougher cards. It's his 1958 Hires Root Beer. So at any rate, from among the cards I have that are normal baseball card size from his career, I essentially chose my favorite 50 to tell the story of his career. So that's really the highlight. Now, card collector since 1978, you might imagine that I must have an awful lot of cards. I mentioned there were some purges, and then like a lot of collectors my age, there were periods where I didn't collect at all. And one of them lasting more than 20 years. So I got back into the hobby around 2014 after a very long layoff. That's a common theme if you meet collectors around my age, whether it was the baseball strike that turned people off, or whether it was just overproduction of cards and seeing cards that you thought, well, I shouldn't say you thought, cards that at one point might have been worth $100, all of a sudden being worth $2. There was a big kind of deflation. Collections were losing a lot of value, especially the newer stuff. Not so much the Mickey Mantles, but more like the Mark McGwire and Jose Canseco rookie cards. So at any rate, like a lot of people, I dropped out for a while. I got back in 2014. That's kind of common. And a lot of people got back during the pandemic. That's had a huge effect on prices. Things have gone way, 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 way up, which if you're selling stuff you have had for a long time is great news. If you're like me and you were still hoping to buy some things to add to your collection, it's bad news. I'm basically on hiatus again as a buyer. So I'm a collector and appreciator and an occasional trader, but I haven't really bought an old card in a while because the prices to me have just gone out of control. Okay, so what else? I'm a card blogger since 2014. I'm going to call myself a number of things that people probably wouldn't have ever heard of 20 years ago, maybe, but or even 10. I don't know. I'm not sure. But anyways, card blogger since 2014. So I had a blog. It was called, I still do, called Jason Cards. And you might wonder about that. Jason's Cards was unavailable. So Jason Cards. Yeah, okay. Hey, you take what you can get on the internet. Mostly I just wrote little stories, sometimes did a tiny bit of research, but tried to write stories that I could illustrate with baseball cards. And sometimes I wrote about the cards themselves. So this was my very first piece. Don't be surprised if you've never seen it before, because the total readership on my personal blog is about 3 people per post. So yeah, anyways, not a very popular blog out there. It wouldn't crack any top 10 list or top 1,000 list, I would imagine. So I will throw this out there as a trivia question, and I think now I do know where the chat is here. So, oh wow, I'm seeing these guesses: 100, 168. Ooh, I gotcha. Okay, so the very first piece I wrote, because this was something that I got kind of infatuated with, I guess, in 2014, was I had a fascination with players who batted .350 and hit 30 or more home runs in the same season. Right. And obviously, I mean, that's an impressive feat, right? 350 and 30 homers, hitting for very high average, hitting for reasonably high power, depending on the era, right? The pinch hitter had 30 homers in the PED era, but, most of the time 30 homers was impressive. So looking at all the players who ever did that, one of the things that was exciting to me was literally in the same city, 4 players did it the exact same year. Any guesses? And all I'm going to say is the player that you're looking at in the picture is 1 out of 4. So who else?
Lefty O'Doul.
Lefty O'Doul is correct. Yes. Okay. So we have Jimmy Fox, Lefty O'Doul. The city, of course, then is Philadelphia.
The year is 1929 or 30.
Yes.
In 1930, like the team hit 316 as a whole. By the way, this is SABR, so people know.
Exactly. Oh, and I see Chuck
Al
Klein.
Simmons.
Al Simmons.
Yes. Yeah, that is exactly right. So we have all 4. Philly, of course, had 2 teams. So anyways, I just thought that was the coolest thing because, as a kid, 1978, 1979, who's going to hit 350 with 30 home runs? Literally nobody, right? So the fact that 4 players did it all in the same city the same year, and it was 1929, right? 1930 is sometimes a common guess because stuff was just off the charts in 1930 with power numbers. But yeah, definitely in a SABR crowd. That's if anybody's going to guess it, here's the crew. So well done. So readership about 3, but I had fun with it. So I didn't say baseball card blogger because in parallel, I also maintained a blog dedicated to Sir Isaac Newton trading cards. Now readership on this blog, I believe, was literally 0. I don't think anybody has ever read an article on this blog other than me, right? Because sometimes I would use it just to document information I found. So This one, Isaac Newton in the Hirsute of Happiness, looks at all the different hairstyles on his various trading cards, and there are many. So I think it's a good article. Nobody's ever read it. You can be the first. But
that is, Jason, that is one thing. At the end of this, you send me an email with these links.
With some links,
and
okay.
I'll send them out to the chapter, and everybody can go start subscribing to them. But
fantastic. Okay, fantastic. So, so I'll give a little bit of my own personal history with SABR. I mentioned I had this little red blog, right, with 3 readers at best. I'm flattering myself because one of those readers was me. But late 2018, I kind of went on a rampage. I started doing a lot of writing. And then, unlike in the old days where I wouldn't really do anything, I started posting some links to my articles on Twitter. And at some point, and I had discovered the SABR Baseball Cards blog. And at some point, Mark reached out to me, and there's Mark. Mark is not the guy in the Tigers jersey. And anyways, Mark's the guy on the left, Mark Armour, you all know him. But anyways, Mark reached out to me and said, hey, how come you don't write for our blog? And I said, oh man, am I qualified? Like, what would I have to do? And, the standards are very high. You have to be a SABR member and want to write about cards. Those are the 2 qualifications. And I only met 1 out of 2. So for my New Year's resolution, I think Mark had got in touch with me in late December, but literally January 1st, 2019, I joined SABR, right? And which was fantastic. I think by something like January 2nd, I had sent my first article off to Mark, and he was appreciative. And then I think on the 3rd, I sent another. And then on the 4th, I sent 2 more. And then on the 5th, I sent a few more. And then he kind of had to coach me a little and let me know that there were like 10 other people who write for the blog. And usually we try to leave things up a couple of days before the next one. And so I got a little overzealous, we'll say that. But I'll share a little bit of an aside. So believe it or not, I had lived in Chicago for a good 10 years. When I joined SABR, well, 9 years when I joined SABR. And I literally had, and this isn't for you to feel sorry for me. It's really just to be amazed, let's say, by SABR, or what a good fit it was for me. I literally had 0 friends in the entire Chicago area. Like all my friends were West Coast where I grew up, and I never made any new friends when I came to Chicago. And it wasn't really my nature to like to meet new people, I guess. Maybe I was a little shy or something like that. I used to go to these work events, and the thing I would dread is like, oh no, I'm gonna have to talk to a bunch of people I don't know. That was like my least favorite thing in the world. So I joined SABR January 1st. The Chicago chapter was having an informal lunch get together, something like January 10th or 20th or whatever. And I got up that morning, I was excited to go. And of course, I'm just about to, I'm going to go hang out with a bunch of people I've never met and talk to people I've never met. And I just had no anxiety around it. I had no shyness. I was nothing but positive about the idea that I was going to go have lunch and talk baseball with a bunch of fans, And I met tons of friends that day that I still hang out with. And, our whole chapter is pretty virtual. I do, make sure Dr. Fauci's not listening. I do get together in person with my own little pod of SABR Chicago guys every now and then, and we try to be careful, but still here, luckily. But it really opened a lot of doors. I mean, the immediate thing was making a few friends and writing for the blog. But just 5 months later, Memorial Day weekend, Cooperstown was having an opening of an exhibit called Shoebox Treasures, a baseball card exhibit at the Hall of Fame. And Jeff Katz, one of our committee members, basically let the baseball card research committee world know that, hey, if anybody wants to come to Cooperstown, he'd be happy to host a little bit and, arrange some hangouts and things like that. And so I did go to that. I had never met anybody in person in my life. So it was a little bit weird flying into Cooperstown, or flying into Albany, I guess, driving into Cooperstown, getting there late at night and, in a way, not really knowing anybody, but obviously having met some people online. And I got to hang out with Jeff and with Mark and with a few other guys, another Mark out there. I don't know if he's on, I don't think so. Mark Hoyle, a huge Red Sox collector. I met Andrew Ehrenstein, who's just so knowledgeable about photos, but old cards as well. And we just had a great time. And, through my SABR connections, AKA Mark and Jeff, really, I got a private tour of the Hall of Fame, well, with Mark. The senior curator, Tom Schieber, took us like into the basement to look at like all the stuff that the general public can't see. I'm holding here the bat that Ted Williams got his 2000th hit with, right? So the white gloves and all that, we had to be really careful. I got to hold a leftover bottle of champagne from the Dodgers 1988 World Series. That's my team because I grew up in LA, so you know, okay. But anyways, yeah, I got to do that. And then Tom was so cool. He's like, what do you guys want to see? And they just had these huge, huge boxes like lining the walls, and every one of them would have like a Hall of Famer's name on it. And for certain Hall of Famers, there might be like 12 boxes in a row. Every now and then you'd see a box that said like Spike Owen, and you wouldn't really know why, but you know, you could be like, oh yeah, what's in the Hack Wilson box? And he would take it out and he'd open it and he'd pull out like a Hack Wilson game worn jersey. He'd pull out a Hack Wilson game used glove. You know, it was just all the stuff that the Hall of Fame had accumulated and organized, but didn't have as part of their main exhibit. And it was funny because I'm getting a little bit sidetracked from my main topic, but this was funny to me. The Hall of Fame does get some donations of stuff that really isn't, I'll put it this way, the Hack Wilson uniform and glove, hey, someday that might show up in the main floor, right? But they also get some stuff that's kind of junk, like somebody thought it was something really valuable or interesting and it wasn't. So I forget the exact specifics to this, but there was some like gigantic tuba that was purported to have been played in the military by Abner Doubleday's third cousin or something like that, right? And of course, you know, Abner Doubleday's connection to the game of baseball itself and its invention is a little bit specious these days. But then I think it was since discovered that, oh no, the tuba didn't actually belong to that guy after all, right? So it was really just some giant tuba in the basement of the Hall of Fame. But evidently, once they accept a donation, they don't sell it and they don't throw it away, right? They just keep it. So he did point out to us a lot of other items of similar provenance that would never make it onto the main floor. But some of the stuff he showed us was just incredibly cool. And we got to touch a lot of it. And so, and I have to really thank Chris, because the whole weekend, Mark and Jeff and all the guys were like, man, oh, it would have been awesome to have Chris here. Oh, that would have been great. Yeah, where's Chris? Well, I think Chris, in a way, I was sort of your sub. So all these little things where they didn't want a big crowd, you know, Jeff Katz had one extra ticket to like celebrity night at the Hall of Fame where I got to meet Tim Raines and Alan Trammell and all these guys, right? I think I was going in on your ticket. So, so I have to thank you for that. Fantastic time. I also want to make a little pitch. I am from the Chicago chapter. We pride ourselves on having the best newsletter in the business. And we can only say that because we haven't really read any other chapter newsletters. Otherwise, we might find out we're wrong. So, you know, they say sometimes in research, don't ask a question if you don't want to know the answer. So, yeah, we're intentionally remaining ignorant and branding ours as the best newsletter in the business. If you subscribe to our mailing list, we don't spam you. You probably get one email every month. But our Chicago newsletter is part of that. We love it. I contribute a little bit to it, and it's quiz time again, I think. Let me see if, am I there yet? I am. So one of the features I do for the newsletter is called Cardboard Detective. And so on your screen, and I'm going to make it bigger now, I think, on your screen, you can see 4 little cutouts of a baseball card, and they're all baseball cards that feature the same player. Now I get a little tricky there. Okay, a lawyer might parse my language and decide I've been misleading. But the point is, the same player, I've taken 4 of his baseball cards, put these little snippets, and then people have to guess who it is. Now, some of you are probably looking at this thinking, no, that would be absolutely impossible. There's no way that anybody could ever do that. I would need 100 years and I still wouldn't get it, right? The funny thing is I started posting these online. The most common critique I got from people was, these are much too easy. Can you make one that's a challenge, right? And so there's something about mixing SABR personalities and card collectors that this is just a skill that many seem to have. So I'm seeing Carlton Fisk, and that's where I was a little bit tricky. Carlton Fisk is pictured in the first card. However, he's not the player who's on all 4 cards. The player on all 4 cards is the player who's holding his hand or standing next to him.
I don't think he's holding his hand, but yes. The one thing I can say is like, well, it's Carlton Fisk, because most of us can get a 72 for the White Sox.
Yeah, exactly. And that was me being intentionally tricky because people would complain my stuff was too easy. So I'm like, oh, I'll get them. I'm going to have people guess Carlton Fisk on this one. As a
Do
former
you
lawyer.
do you, in this, because there's working it, do you use minor league photos in this?
I have been known to. In fact, I once used Venezuelan Winter League, but these are all major league. These are all major league.
So
Guesses. Paul says it's a Texas Ranger, and that is true for 2 of the 4 cards. The other 2, you can probably guess the team best by looking at the 4th card, and that would be a mascot who's fallen out of favor. But at any rate, so let's say a player who was with the Indians and the Rangers, or the Cleveland baseball team and the Rangers.
is it a well-known player?
They don't have to be. This one I'd say is rather well known. Yeah, rather well known. I tend never to choose somebody that nobody's ever heard of, but it's not like they're all Hank Aaron and Willie Mays. Mike Hargrove is an excellent guess. Buddy Bell, well done, Mark. Buddy Bell is the answer. And on the next page, we can see these cards coming into focus.
I gotta tell you what, now I was really struggling with that Milwaukee. I was trying to figure out, I was like, how is that? I was like, he said Buddy Bell. There's no way the Milwaukee guy is Buddy Bell. Oh, that's because.
Right. Yeah. The lawyer was right to object, but literally the only way that I could keep people from complaining that my stuff was too easy was to throw in these kinds of red herrings and anyway. All right, let's see. So, okay. So who else is this guy? The 59 minutes of the talk is going to be who's this guy, and then 1 minute's going to be what's some interesting stuff to tell you. But anyways, I thought I would prolong my introduction as a way of whetting the appetite for the interesting stuff I might tell you about if there's time. So I'm now the co-chair of the Baseball Cards Research Committee, along with Nick Vosbrink, who's in New Jersey. And this screen kind of shows, I'm going to say, the 2 main things I feel like I do with that role. So one of them is that in addition to writing, I'm kind of like a manager or editor of the SABR Baseball Cards blog. So we have, at any given time, about 10 pretty active authors. All told, we've literally had almost 70 different authors write for the blog. And, as they submit their work before it goes live, Nick or I, or sometimes both, review it. We're not compulsive fact checkers. We kind of leave it to the authors. And then generally, if something is wrong, someone will let everybody know in the comments. SABR members are really good about pointing out errors. So we will, update if that kind of thing happens. But generally, does it flow well? Is this a topic of interest? Is this something that we haven't already done? Are there some links we should add to other articles that are relevant, either on the blog or off the blog? So we see the blog, some committees have conferences as kind of their big thing, or they publish a journal. I'm going to say we see the blog as kind of our most lasting legacy. This blog now is up to almost 700 articles. And it's not the only thing we do, but I think if somebody said, hey, SABR Baseball Cards, out of all the things you do, you can only keep doing one thing, I think we would actually choose the blog. And then over on the right-hand side, hey, look, it's us. The other thing that I do as co-chair is I also co-manage the SABR Baseball Cards Twitter account. So in this case, as that manager or co-manager, I retweeted the fact that I would be here today. So yeah, SABR Baseball Cards retweeted. That's one of my jobs too. So that's been since May of 2019. So I joined, and within 5 months, Mark and Chris turned over the keys to Nick and me. So I also say, and Chris was kind to allude to this at the beginning, I'm a notorious card trimmer. Now, among baseball card collectors, that can have a very bad connotation. I'm using it a little bit tongue-in-cheek. One of the things that I started doing during the pandemic, and it turns out a lot of collectors did, like I can literally make a list now of 100 different people that are doing this and sharing their work online, is I started making what's called card art. That's another thing. Maybe if you asked 2 years ago, what's card art? Somebody would say, I don't know, I've never heard of it. And that's still the case for a lot of people, but at least among some subculture on the internet. It's a thing, right? It's a thing. And so what's it about? It's about cutting up old baseball cards and sort of putting them back together in novel ways. In my case, my weapon of choice is glitter paper from Joann's craft store. And as it turns out, right? Well, I like making them. It's been, for the pandemic, a really nice, relaxing kind of escape from the dystopia we sometimes found ourselves in. But other collectors, especially player collectors, you know, if they had all 700 Dwight Gooden cards they were ever going to find, but they wanted something new to feed their fix, card art sometimes filled that gap. You'd say, hey, I made a glitter paper Dwight Gooden. Are you interested?
I literally thought you were putting glue on them and then putting glitter on them. I never heard of whatever glitter paper is.
Yeah. The degree of difficulty is much lower than it might look.
I was like, that is insane.
Oh, hey, shout out to my wife. She just said, babe, you're a good cutter. Nobody can take that away from you. Yeah. Thank you, Jody. Right. So yeah. So anyways, I'll sort of fast forward a little bit, but June 2020 pandemic, I made a few of these just for myself and for my Chicago SABR buds. But I made one day and I thought, you know what, I'm going to put it online and I'm just going to auction it off, you know, starting at a penny or whatever. And I'm going to give all the money to the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum. And they were on my mind because they had closed their doors. The Hall of Game induction ceremony that I was going to go to would have been, I think, that weekend. And of course, they weren't having that. They had all these big events planned for the Negro League Centennial that, you know, all got canceled or postponed. And so I thought, you know what, let's see what I can raise. It might be $3. It might be $300. And so this one card, it was a Wade Boggs Don Russ rookie card, sold for $42. All the money went to the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum. And then either because I was very prescient or because I was crazy, I concluded from that one card that maybe my purpose during the pandemic was to raise $25,000 for charity. So, you know, I'd raised 42, why not 25,000? As I'm here today and the pandemic is still going strong, I'm at literally $15,000. So I've raised $15,000 for charity, none for myself, all the charity, and obviously gone out of pocket a lot on shipping and other things. But the beauty of the cards I use, which are almost all 1980s and 90s, is they are pretty much worthless. And so the cards are either in my collection, taking up room, right? Or if somebody makes a request I don't have, I go on eBay and, you know, most of the time I can buy the card for under $1 that I need to use. So I've
got a couple 1,078.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Now, interestingly, right, not to get too nerdy, but the 70s, almost every 1970s design is kind of tough to work with for my particular style, whereas almost every single year of the 80s is perfect for my style. And so, and of course, my big piles in the basement are all 1980s. And so that was kind of a nice confluence there. So I managed to gather a little bit of acclaim that surprised me. And so this is kind of my Heavy J Studios resume here. Ryan Fagan, who's the lead baseball writer for the Sporting News, did a story on just kind of unusual things collectors were doing during the pandemic. And he kind of made me, well, like one of maybe 6 or 7 collectors, but kind of the main one in the article, which was super flattering, and even the cover photo. So there's me with my Kirk Gibson shirt and my Don Mattingly glitter card. I got to do a few interviews. We have a local reporter here in Chicago, Jeremy Ross. He did a kind of a YouTube story on me that he thought CBS might pick up. They chose not to, but at any rate, it's a really cool, like, professionally produced YouTube story that's about 4 minutes long. And then Jeremy won an Emmy. No cause and effect there. It turns out the Emmy was for other stuff, but okay, I'll take it. And just to kind of show my style a tiny bit, we had 2 weeks ago, Chicago SABR, we hosted Bobby Dernier from the 1984 NL East champion team. And what the organizer and 2 other people, including myself, knew was that Ryne Sandberg was going to crash the meeting. The organizer had written letters to a bunch of 1984 Cubs and said, hey, we're going to be interviewing Bobby D. You're welcome to crash it and say hi, right? And so my buddy John, Chicago SABR, got a text from Ryne Sandberg like a week later and said, hey, John, this is Ryan Sandberg. I'd love to go to the meeting, you know, shoot me the information. I'm going to put it on my calendar, right? So we didn't want to tell him. We didn't want to tell anybody. Oh yeah, and he signed it with a rhino emoji. So that was awesome. We didn't want to tell anybody because we were scared that he wouldn't show up, number one. And then we were also scared that a whole bunch of people would come to the meeting really pumped up about Ryan Sandberg, who didn't really care about Bobby D. And we didn't feel like that was fair to Bobby D, who, by the way, didn't know that Ryan Sandberg was coming. So we just kept it completely under wraps and started the meeting off, you know, did a little presentation on Bobby D, chatted with him a little bit. And then when John put up a thing on what in Chicago we call the Daily Double, you know, Bobby D and Ryan Sandberg, he said, you know, as long as we're talking about the Daily Double, maybe we should invite Rhino to join. And then sure enough, here comes Rhino. And I thought he might spend 5 minutes with us. He literally spent almost 2 hours. And the rest of the meeting was just Rhino and Bobby D talking baseball for a good 2 hours. Funny stories. It was like they didn't even know we were there.
Jason, man.
Yeah, it was insane. The video's up on the SABR YouTube channel. And so I made a commemorative card and gave it to John, the organizer. You know, SABR does not yet have best virtual meeting of the pandemic as an award. So in the meantime, I made this as John's trophy and unofficially awarded it to him for the best virtual meeting of the pandemic.
So question about that card. Now, does the card stop at the gold or does it stop at the slate?
Oh, yeah, so interesting. So the gold is essentially the outer border, but I do have the helmets and Rhino's bat extending past the border.
It is. It like has a texture outside the frame.
Oh, yeah,
That's what I was wondering. Because I would bend that bat in about 2 seconds.
Yeah, you got to take care of these things. They're very fragile. They're very fragile. So a little bit of
also, one second before you continue. This is my chapter meeting. And you say we got Ryan Sandberg. I brought a guy who got Ryan Sandberg. So my chapter meeting, really, come on, you're hurt my feelings there. So now I'll get Enos. Well, probably not Enos. We'll figure out somebody to top Ryan Sandberg. I don't know who's going to be.
If you brought Enos Slaughter to a meeting, I'm not sure what would happen next. It would definitely be the most unusual meeting. Okay, let's see. Right. So, okay. Anyways, let's jump into it. I had a little bit of trivia, but I'm just going to jump in. So the SABR Baseball Cards Research Committee, sometimes people say, there's a SABR Baseball Cards Research Committee? Really? Right? I didn't know that, honestly, like until I learned about the blog. And I'm one of probably tens of millions of baseball fans who until late 2018, if somebody said, have you heard of SABR? I'd say, of course. And they'd say, what's SABR about? And I'd say, oh, complicated stats. And that was it. Like, that's all I thought it was. So, you know, my bad. But I think I was one of tens of millions. And so, you know, as I've come to learn, right, baseball cards, biography, games project, Negro Leagues Committee, women in baseball, pictorial, and the list goes on and on and on, right? That if you're into baseball, SABR's got no shortage of things you're going to be into and tons of great people to meet. So, but at any rate, yeah, Baseball Card Committee, a little bit of history. So Chris and Mark, 2016, started the committee. First blog post, it didn't take long, November 23rd, Twitter account and Facebook account popped up shortly after. Cooperstown meetup, I shared a little bit about 2019. In 2020, we launched our committee's award. We called it the Jefferson Burdick Award, maybe the most famous baseball card collector of all time, or at least of the early years. Maybe the most famous hobby pioneer would be a good way to say it. And local meetups encouraged, maybe not these days with COVID and everything like that, but just before COVID, our Chicago crew started doing these meetups of what I'll call the unofficial baseball card subcommittee of the Chicago chapter. And we just had a great time. I'll share a picture soon enough. Oh, there's the Raja. Okay, I was wondering where my art went. So just to say a little bit more about the blog, I'm going to move this little window out of the way there. Okay, so any SABR member is eligible to write for the blog, right? You just have to be an active member, or a current member, I should say. You don't even have to be that active, a current member, and want to write about baseball cards. That's it. That's really it. In terms of the range of topics, we tend to avoid, oh, this card we think is going to be worth 3 times as much next year, or, oh, check this out, I bought this for this much and sold it for this much. We don't really get into the money side of the hobby, but just about anything else totally works. I've listed a few of our styles. There's personal, that's a pretty common one. Somebody sharing a story, like Don Zaminda just shared what it was like collecting cards his very first year, 1955, 1956. You know, waiting on the curb for the truck to pull up that dropped off the boxes or the packs. You know, so a lot of personal accounts of what the hobby, you know, meant to you as a kid or means to you today. There's some humor. Some is scholarly, right? But, you know, not quite enough to intimidate you. We have a fellow named Andrew Forbes. He just has a brand new book out. He is seriously literary. Like I'm almost in tears when I read his pieces. I would say if you only read one piece on the SABR Baseball Cards blog, maybe it should be Andrew Forbes. It's just so high quality. That said, don't let it scare you away from writing. They're not all like his. He's the only one doing it. And even Grouchy. So every now and then we get the stay off my lawn posts. I might be guilty of one or two where we grumble about changes in the hobby or how shiny the new cards are and how there's, you know, over 700 Dwight Gooden cards and things like that. New authors are very, very welcome. So just to give an idea of the range of the blog, I've just identified, these are really just our most recent posts, our 9 most recent posts. So you'll see a few different members here, certainly not our whole cast, and you'll see some repeats because that happens too. We don't have a lot of rules, you know, on these things. But anyways, a minor tradition by Kurt. This has to do with minor league cards of athletic trainers. No relation here. Jason Schwartzman is neither the famous actor nor sort of a long form of my own name. But anyways, there he is. Chris Kamka from My Chapter Oldies But Goodies wrote about a 1990 set from Pacific on the Senior League in Florida. Don Zaminda, I mentioned, talked about collecting his very first year. I've got a couple here. Girl Power looks at female artists who've drawn for baseball cards over the years, going back to, I believe, 1968 was the first year I could find, through the present, where a number of female artists are writing for, or pardon me, are drawing cards, designing cards for Topps. What About Blob is kind of a weird one, but it picked up on kind of a philosophical bent that my co-chair started on what defines a baseball card. When is something not a baseball card? Or, you know, what are some things that, you know, are kind of gray area as to whether they're baseball cards or not. So I looked at a particular case study featuring a somewhat generic baseball-like player called Blob, who's been on some cards these days, and whether we should count those as baseball cards or something else. Anthony Salazar from Pacific Northwest, he got a bunch of stuff that was in a box from his uncle, and so every now and then he writes about the next thing he opened up from it. Nick, our co-chair, baseball card club, so sharing memories from being in the baseball card club. I can't remember if it was junior high or high school, but the police actually show up one day, so there's some drama. Images is currency. Nick has a big interest in photography, and he looks at baseball cards through the lens, no pun intended, of just all kinds of things where the image of somebody, usually famous, is sort of associated with something of value, you know, and we can think of famous people's images on coins and dollar bills and whatnot. But for a little more variety, read Nick's article. And then Paul Ember from around the Philly area, Covering the Bases, is a series he does where he looks at the photograph on a baseball card, in this case, 1986 Topps Tony Perez, and does a little bit of homework to figure out the exact day and the event. And so in this case, he had figured out the day, I think in 1985, where Tony Perez had hit a home run and Eric Davis was waiting for him on deck, and they did a high 10, high fives with, you know, each hand. So anyways, it just gives you a sense of the real variety that we have. Pretty much everything but money. We also have some series. I mentioned Covering the Bases is something that Paul comes back to every now and then with different baseball cards. So there were about 6 that I feel like are still active. There may be some, you know, that haven't been reactivated lately, but besides Covering the Bases, I do a series called Overanalyzing 1933 Gaudy. I'll share a little bit more about that in a bit. My favorite common, and this is sometimes if somebody says, hey, I'd like to write for the blog, but I have no idea what I should write about, we suggest, why don't you write about your favorite common? You know, a card that's worth hardly anything in the price guide, but has a lot of sentimental value to you, right? And we get some great stories there, and it's a great way to introduce ourselves as collectors. Another nice way to introduce ourselves as collectors that's really friendly to a first-time writer, we call Player Collection Spotlight. So pretend you collect Corey Seager cards or Juan Marichal cards. No big deal. You just write about, I collect Juan Marichal, here's why, here's some of my favorite cards. Again, it's a way of introducing yourself and featuring some of his, some of the players' cards. So that's a nice series. One that I like is called Uncommon Common. And one of the players is pictured here, Charlie Berry. He's considered a common in the 1933 Gowdy set, but he actually had just a remarkable football career as well, and a remarkable baseball and football career as a referee or umpire, choose your sport. Just a phenomenal career in sports, nonetheless a common player. And so I tell his story a little bit there. I try not to be too repetitive with the SABR bio, but put more of a card twist. So at any rate, he's one of the players featured. Dave Hoskins is featured, and then a football player is actually featured, which kind of broke our rules. But again, I mentioned we don't have a lot of rules. Cardboard Crosswalk, that's actually my next post coming soon. And I've done a few of these where I just compare two sets across the decades that have something or other in common. And so in this case, following up on Chris Kampka's post on the 1990 Senior League, I compared that 1990 Senior League set to 1978 Topps, where I got my start. And remarkably, half the cards in that Senior League set, 1990, come from players who were in the 1978 Topps set. I will encourage you to read the article when it comes out, but kind of a remarkable takeaway at the end. And sometimes I don't know these things until I finish, because I don't plan and then write. I just sort of write as I think. But it turns out that there are so many, so many players from 1978 Topps that if you open a pack, a 12-card pack of 1990 Pacific, the chances are more than 50-50 that you will actually have teammates in your pack from 1978 Topps, believe it or not, right? So I thought that was pretty crazy. But anyways, there's some fun things, like, for example, the seven 1978 Topps Red Sox players all end up on the exact same team in the 1990 Pacific Senior League set. So yes, all right. As Chris sometimes says when people say, okay, but who cares? Well, I do. That's why I wrote about it. Okay.
I didn't know there was a Senior League set. So that's
yeah, check it out. It's no longer front page because Kurt just put his article up, but the second article on the blog is covering the Senior League set, and it's pretty cool. I mean, it's for me, a lot of nostalgia because so many of the players are from that first year I collected. We can talk Twitter community a little bit, and this was fun because I reused a slide in 2019, June 2019. I presented to my own chapter on the baseball card committee. And at that time, I said, hey, our Twitter account has almost 5,000 followers or members. Well, now it's 10,000. It's like 9,700 or something like that. So pretty much doubled in less than 2 years, which we think is good. And a lot of really fun stuff being brought to it. I feel like when I took over as co-chair, I was kind of feeding the account with a bunch of stuff like this Babe Ruth poll. Now I feel like it's at its best if I don't really put anything in anymore. And I'll show some examples, some highlights from other members. But one of the things that was a really nice honor was, I think it was in 2020, The Athletic published an article on the 20 must-follow baseball social media accounts. And we were one of them. That was a very pleasant and extremely unexpected surprise. So SABR Baseball Cards or SABR BB Cards, one of the Athletic's top 50 must-follow baseball accounts. So I don't know if they redo that each year or if it's just for life, but we'll go with for life. So some highlights: George Bennett, he's in our South Florida chapter. He is the, wow, his collection is so enviable. This post probably least showcases how awesome his collection is. But anyways, he does what we call, or what he calls, carpet of cards, and he's had some imitators now. But he simply uses cards to illustrate something of interest. Sometimes it's a player's entire career, like Willie Mays, carpet of Willie Mays. But a lot of times he does things that are really interesting, like in this case, ordering the 3,000 hit club by batting average. So, and then it's often part of a thread, whereas you click down the thread, you learn some interesting trivia about the players pictured. And you almost always have people write in and they say things like, oh man, I never realized that. So it's kind of a fun way to learn about baseball through cards. So that's George, South Florida. Another highlight, this is my Chicago chapter mate, John. He's the organizer of the Bobby D and Rhino meeting, in fact, but he does something he calls the literal series. So remaking old Topps cards with some people might say really bad puns, or I might say clever puns on their names. Like here's Ed Crane Pool, Woody Held, featuring, you know, Woody from Toy Story being held, Rocky Bridge. Anyway, you get the idea, but these kinds of things get contributed now. Tim Jenkins, Pacific Northwest, is reliable for cards of the day. He tends to go from the 60s and 70s, and I'll say for our members who contribute things, a lot of times you can almost guess their age by the cards they post, because almost always it's like when they started collecting, what were the sets they were doing. So Tim's, you know, a few years older than me, but anyways, so here he is with a little, you know, play on the Johnson & Johnson vaccine and single shots up the middle, and the Johnson & Johnson infield in Baltimore. Pack of the day, this is Ryan Fagan. He's St. Louis area, writes for the Sporting News. He pretty reliably for the last 6 months at least has opened a pack each day, takes a picture of it, and then people just share funny stories about a player. You know, usually not something like, oh, Bruce Sutter, led the NL in saves in 1982 or something like that. Not something like that, that sort of household knowledge or easy to find online. But a lot of times a personal experience, like, oh, I was getting my hair cut and the guy in the chair next to me was Jerry Hairston, and, you know, and then blah, 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 blah. So good stuff there. So that's good content that we see. Mike O'Reilly, he's also in my chapter. He has an amazing collection as well. He tends to focus on just cards that look really beautiful. He's drawn to a lot of the older sets, not just baseball either. And so he's featuring here the 6 horizontal cards from the T206 tobacco set. And then Jack Dunn, who's a vertical card. I've shown it with the proper orientation and kind of that big inset photo. But Jack Dunn, who you can pretend instead of catching a pop-up is kind of laying out, you know, for a tough sinking liner, if you like. But collectors generally, the consensus is that it's truly a vertical, not a horizontal, but you can kind of fake it.
I was wondering about that. You said 6, and I said, well, there's clearly 7.
Yeah, it kind of blends in. You know, you could go either way with it. But yeah, let's see. The Facebook group has practically tripled since 2 years ago when I did a presentation on the committee. And a lot of the folks are the same folks, and so some of the content is repetitive, but we've got a lot of folks that contribute on the Facebook group, but not on Twitter, right? So it's just kind of another dimension. Arthur K. Miller is just an amazing artist, and he tends to create new cards from old sets, you know, just using his artistic skills. So here's Josh Gibson featured on a 1949 Leaf. He does a lot with like the early Bowmans. He tends to take the sets that were already really artistic as a canvas for his art. So that's awesome. Maxwell Cates, who I just love. He always posts really cool stuff, and has really cool stories too about meeting a lot of players and things like that. But anyways, he featured the artwork that the 1972 Topps set was inspired by just the other day. Okay, the blog I've talked about a little. I've just got some stats here. It's about 250 views per day. We tend to have maybe 3 or 4 articles each week. Sometimes in a lull, there might only be 1 article a week, but almost every couple of days it seems to refresh. You need to be a SABR member. You want to, you know, you like writing about cards, we'll say, or you're willing to try writing about cards. So the blog I've talked about a bit. In-person meetups, it's been a while since we've had this one featured, but some scenes from Cooperstown. A few of us got together at the National in Chicago a couple months after that. And then this picture in the lower left is my Chicago crew. We have what we call our junk wax nights. And I'll tell you, junk wax is getting more and more expensive. It's almost not junk wax anymore. But we would go to the hobby shop. We would buy a box from the 1980s or 90s, you know, a whole box for $10. And these were boxes that when they came out might have cost you $35. But, you know, we get the whole box for $10. We'd each bring one. And then we just spend the night opening up cards. And what we found was that it didn't matter if the cards were worthless. I think down at the very bottom, you might see a Randy Johnson rookie card. But, you know, that back then, well, actually back then he wasn't that good yet, but, you know, at some point that might've felt valuable. Nowadays it's a dime a dozen. But the point is, it didn't matter if the cards are worthless. When you open a pack, and let's say, I'll date myself a little, but if you open a pack of 1987 Topps and you get a Bo Jackson rookie, you're just stoked. You just are, right? And then later it can hit you that you maybe could have bought it on eBay for $1. Doesn't matter. You're just like, oh my God, I got the Bo, right? So we have a lot of fun kind of reliving our, in their case, maybe their low teenage years, and in my case, my college years, with some of the years that we open. We also, because of the pandemic, on the committee started some virtual events. We've had a few. One of them was called the Future of Baseball Cards. And I think probably people were skeptical of this at the time. And I was too, I will admit that. But we had my co-chair, we had another artist named Scott Hodges, and then we had former MLBer, Micah Johnson. He played for the Dodgers, the White Sox, and I think the Braves, and then went on to become an artist. In fact, I have a Jackie Robinson painting he did in my basement. Really good artist. I really liked him as an artist. He had started checking in with me, you know, through my connection to SABR Baseball Cards, getting my opinion of the digital market, right? What today might be, you know, referred to as these NFTs, but basically, did I think digital baseball cards would ever really take off, or digital basketball cards? So I gave my opinion, and of course I was pretty old school. I'm like, oh, I don't think so, right? And he's like, you know, well, I don't know. I mean, I'm thinking of getting into digital art. And I was like, why would somebody buy digital art? Well, joke was on me. So fast forward to, I think
3 weeks ago.
I think March. I'm going to say, well, for what I'm referring to, I'm just going to say, no, I think February, Micah literally sold more than $2 million of his digital art in about a minute and a half. Unbelievable. And I'm not here to say, why would somebody buy the digital? Like, I'm not going to say I even get it. I'm just going to say, I guess he knew what he was talking about. And among some folks out there, this is a big deal, right? And some of you may have heard names like NBA Top Shot. I don't really dabble in any of this stuff, but sure enough, like Micah was telling me when he called me on the phone, he's like, Jason, you want to be there when these NBA highlights come out, digital only. You want to be there on that. Trust me. And I'm like, no, thanks. Right. Well, literally anybody that was anywhere near the ground floor of NBA Top Shot literally would have been able to turn $100 into $500,000. Like, no joke. So I should have listened to him. Haha. Anyways, but what else do we do as a committee? We have an award. Our very first award winner was Mike Ehrenstein. His son is an active SABR member and part of our Cooperstown meetup. You might recognize my glitter on the border and even the inner border. But anyways, oh man, do we love Mike in the hobby. I won't go into all his contributions here other than to say his whole award ceremony's on YouTube, and we've got a couple of write-ups on him on the blog, but he was our first winner, and I think almost unanimously decreed the most deserving person we could have made our first winner. We recently announced our second winner, and so this is for 2021. We'll be honoring him in July with a virtual ceremony timed sort of in the ballpark of the SABR National Virtual. We don't want to conflict with it, but we'll kind of be in the neighborhood. So anyways, Doug Mcwilliams, he did a lot of photography for Topps. If you were to thumb through a big stack of baseball cards from a certain era, boy, a lot of them would be Doug. And he really did it with a lot of care. And maybe the other photographers did as well. But at any rate, Tom from the Hall of Fame wrote us a nice testimonial on Doug. I love that Harold Reynolds. I think Doug may have even declared this Harold Reynolds his favorite card that he took a picture of. I'm not sure. And he even had the honor of the final Hank Aaron card for Topps. Okay, let me do a quick check-in with Chris. So Chris, I know initially you gave me like a kind of a long time span that this group meets, but I wasn't totally sure how much of that you wanted me to fill up. So I've introduced the committee. If you like, I can introduce a couple other things, or if you want, we can say, oh no, let's jump into discussion and trivia and things. I have more, but I don't have to do it.
Well, let's do some questions, because you covered a lot, and I'm sure I've gotten down some questions, and after a while, I'm gonna forget my questions.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Let's do that. I'm gonna hide the slides, and then we can go back in for more if we like, or we can say, oh man, that was enough of that guy. Okay. All right, y'all. I'm gonna open up my view of the chat.
So I'm gonna actually, we can talk, so people.
Yeah, we're talking.
So my question was on those Hank Aaron ones. So those Hank Aaron ones, you said 700 Dwight Goodens. How many Hank Aarons in that normal stretch? And when did it start making not his regular card, right? So I know they were made all-star cards, and so Hank Aaron would have been on them, and then leader cards where him and Willie Mays. So roughly how many Hank Aarons from 54 to 76? Yeah,
so much depends. It's so much depends on what you count and how you count it. So I know we, having lawyers here, it's a little bit like the Florida election recount of 2000, right? What do you count and how do you count it? Example, some of you might remember in like the mid 70s, those circles, they're called like MSA discs, and they came with certain products, right? So, it's kind of a disc. Is it a baseball card? Some people might say, I don't really think of that as a card. I'm not going to count it. Other people might say, of course it is. Well, then do you want the one with this brand of potato chips advertised on the back and this brand? Is that two different ones? So there, you can do the accounting different ways. I'm going to say, in my world, you saw my 50 from that period. Another common one that some people count and some people don't would be the Milwaukee Braves team card or the Atlanta Braves team card, right? He's on there, right? Is it a Hank Aaron card? I tend not to count it. Some collectors do. Some collectors, believe it or not, if you think about the Topps set checklists, like here's cards 1 to 132 in the set. Well, pretend Hank Aaron's name is on it because he's card 50. So it literally is just like the names of 132 guys, and one of them happens to be Hank Aaron. Literally, there are Hank Aaron collectors that say, oh, I got to have that, right? So again, what do you count and how do you count it? But from my perspective, I'm just going to say ballpark. It's kind of 100-ish, that fit his playing career. I'm not talking about after his career. Yeah. Ballpark 100-ish, but I tend not to count a number of things. You mentioned the all-star cards. He was famously an all-star, practically every year, from near the beginning of his career, almost until the very end. There was one year, so Topps didn't do all-star cards every year. So you're not going to find, he was a 25-time all-star. You won't find 25 Topps all-star cards. And of course, some of those years they had 2 all-star games, and that counts double. Topps wouldn't have done 2 cards. But there were a lot of years that Topps simply didn't do all-stars. So his total number of all-star cards, just going by memory, is probably more like 7 or 8. But there was one year, 1969, where Topps did do all-star cards, and they went with 3 National League outfielders, but he wasn't one of them. And I don't have a good explanation for that, because he certainly started the all-star game. But for whatever reason, yeah. So
right. Well, I know in 75, like the first 8 cards or first 6 cards were all Hank Aaron. It's a series of his baseball cards through the years. I think that's what it is. Is it?
Yeah. Yes.
Is that correct, Mark?
It's the 1974 set. In anticipation of breaking the record. So he finished 1973 at 713 home runs, right? And so Topps went out on a limb, and they released their cards before the season even started. Card 1 was basically congratulations to the new home run king, which he wasn't yet, but it was barring death threats and things, it felt like a safe bet. So anyways, thankfully, it happened, right? But then, yeah, you're exactly right. It was after that, the next 5 cards, basically in miniature, showed his baseball card career from 1954 to 1973. Interestingly, the Canadian version of the set, the O-Pee-Chee, it was his first 9 cards. Because the Topps cards would show 4 miniatures per card. So to get to 20, they needed, 5 extra cards. In O-Pee-Chee, in some cases, they only showed 2 miniature cards per card. And so literally, if you were to put your 1974 O-Pee-Chee set in a binder, the first entire page would be Hank Aaron cards, cards 1 through 9 in the set.
All right. Who wants to go next? I love this stuff.
All right. Yeah. And Mark notes in the audience, 0 Hank Aaron 3Ds. Yeah, during his career, the closest we could come to a 3D, but not what Mark means, was 1957. There was something called Swift Meets. And these were interesting. The card basically came on something that almost looked like a coaster, but you could punch out the body parts individually and then connect them, almost like if you ever had a kit as a kid to make a dinosaur skeleton from 2-dimensional little parts that kind of fit together. And so you could build a 3-dimensional Hank Aaron from this thing. And y'all probably know how the hobby works. Anyone who actually built that Hank Aaron, their built Hank Aaron is probably worth 1/20th of anyone who left that coaster intact without punching out the little pieces, right?
He was never on a Kellogg's or, the reflective cards. Hank Aaron wasn't ever on one of those?
Not during his career. In the 1980s, he got a Kellogg's 3D. But when Kellogg's was doing the sets, 1972 and with the all-time greats and 73 and whatnot, he just wasn't. Topps also did, I think, a 3D test issue in 68 or 69, something like that he didn't make it into. So yeah, lucky for me, because a lot of this stuff is like when Topps did a test issue, these cards are really, 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 really expensive. And so I'm just relieved, right? When I see, oh, good, there wasn't a Hank Aaron in that set.
So, Stephen, I see you behind you. You have a great wall. Some of it's cards. Is it all pictures?
Oh, I'm up in the kitchen because our internet's a little better here. So most of my card stuff's down in the basement. So now this is just plain old art. Annie Lee is the artist here, and yeah, but just the kitchen.
Stephen.
Yes. Yeah, behind me, those are all pictures. I was a longtime producer for Fox Sports, Turner, Nesson. These are all people I either worked with or met while working. So I've gotten all these autographs. So they're all photos that are autographed by the.
I thought there might be baseball cards that were similar to what we were just doing on that wall.
No, the other side of the computer has baseball cards all over the place.
So who else has a question about what we've seen so far? Because I have obviously more questions, but y'all can get in there. Howard, you're muted.
Jason.
Yes.
What vintage is the jersey that you wear?
Oh, okay. It's kind of a funny one because, well, I don't know if anybody can see this. It's literally labeled 1974 Hank Aaron, right? And it's got the if that shows the 715 patch. But the style itself, I feel like, is more like Milwaukee. So this was kind of an inexpensive made in China thing. It's definitely not, game worn Hank Aaron or anything like that. Yeah, this was just something I found online. But it kind of reminded me of an old time Hank Aaron Milwaukee Braves jersey.
What's the patch on the right arm?
Yeah. Okay. So here it actually says Atlanta Braves, right? And then the other one is the 715th logo. Funny story was when I met Hank Aaron, right? Of course I wore this. It was an event at Milwaukee's Miller Park. And it was only after other people showed up, because my wife and I, we were the first ones there by design. I insisted we were first. As other people started filling in, nobody else was dressed like me. It turned out it was kind of a business casual event, other than me. And but yeah, Hank himself did say something like, "Hey, nice jersey." So I was, he always knew how to make someone feel good,
Bob?
Well, I hope the awkward moment.
Nope. Okay. All right. So my other question I have is, you mentioned the OPCs. I don't know how.
Mhm.
And I've always gotten some periodically. Like thought you were buying regular tops and you bought it, and they were like, "What is going on here?" I actually though don't know, even though I've collected cards my whole life. Is there an OPC set for all the top sets? Or where does that go to?
Yeah, good question. So the first main flagship set that O-Pee-Chee had a parallel for, I think, was 1965. Now you can go a little bit earlier than that, and O-Pee-Chee did a parallel of some Topps tattoos, right? So the O-Pee-Chee Topps connection sort of predates the standard trading card sets, but I think 65 was the start. There was a continuous run that went, I'm going to say, at least into the mid 1980s. And then I mentioned I took 20 years off of baseball cards. I have a gap in my knowledge that's pretty big. Just judging from my Dwight Gooden collection, I'm going to say I think O-Pee-Chee at some point stopped. Around ballpark around 1990-ish. I'd have to look that up. But O-Pee-Chee, before the relationship with Topps, and this wasn't, continuous year after year, but you can actually go back to, I think it's 1936, and find an O-Pee-Chee Canadian baseball set that includes one of a few cards recognized as Joe DiMaggio's rookie card. Not a cheap card, the O-Pee-Chee Joe DiMaggio, and these cards are extremely hard to find. But yeah, they started paralleling Topps baseball in 65. However, many of those years, it was a shorter set. So some of the old time collectors, veteran collectors will remember the days when Topps released their cards in series, right? Here's the low numbers, or series 1. Okay, now series 2 is out. If Topps had, let's say, 6 series in the US set, the O-Pee-Chee might only be the first 2 or 3. There were years where in Venezuela, the Venezuelan Topps set did kind of the same. It just took the first 1 or 2 or 3 series of the US set. What I don't know is if it was an intentionally smaller set just out of some recognition that the market was smaller, or if it had more to do with production. I think this is actually my working theory, is that the Venezuelan or the Canadian cards with the French translations and things like that were produced after the US cards were, right? You'd produce that US set, get it out there, and then somewhere in Caracas, maybe not, maybe it was, here in the US, but somebody had the job of sort of making the Venezuelan counterpart or the Canadian counterpart, which took time. And so if you think of it, yeah.
There's a Venezuelan O-Pee-Chee set?
Not O-Pee-Chee, but just Venezuelan Topps. So if you were to look, for instance, at the year 1966, you could get, I think in 66, you could get a US mantle, a Canadian mantle, and a Venezuelan mantle. And they would all on the front look pretty much identical, right? And it's only when you flip them over or the paper stock itself would reveal differences. So,
I've never even heard of it. I have a million baseball cards. I've never heard of it.
Yeah, I did a big write-up on Venezuelan on the blog. I think it's called Pirates of the Caribbean. So it wouldn't necessarily jump out at you.
Sorry, you're gonna have to send Disney $2 for that.
Yeah. They're expensive. But I do think what happened is, since it took time to convert the US card or the US, sheet of cards into the Venezuelan or Canadian counterpart, essentially when you got to the Topps high numbers coming out late in the baseball season, by the time Venezuela or Canada would have had stuff, it would have been after the season, and oh well, right? So I think that's why only the early ones were done. And then as production time decreased, you would see more and more of the US cards brought into the Canadian O-Pee-Chee set. You would also occasionally see bonuses, and this is not my area of expertise. I'm simply going to whet the appetite. I will say the sort of, some people who collected O-Pee-Chee in the 70s might have had fun with, for example, 1979 Pete Rose. If you had the Topps card, he's on the Reds. If you had the O-Pee-Chee card, the picture is him on the Reds, but the team name says Phillies, and there's a little thing that says signed with Phillies in December or something like that, right? So that was kind of a hallmark of the O-Pee-Chees, is that they would have those updated teams, right? And again, that suggests a lag between when they were produced, right? They're produced after the Topps cards were. So that was one of the things that was kind of cool. But in 1971, O-Pee-Chee produced two different Rusty Staub cards. There was a bonus Canadian Rusty Staub. So if anybody's a Rusty Staub collector, in 71, the O-Pee-Chee isn't simply a mirror or a match of the Topps. You don't need to say, oh, I don't need the Canadian, it's the same as this. No, there's a different one, different pose, right? 1977 is a year where a lot of variations occur between the US and Canadian. I think, and again, this isn't my top subject, I'm going to probably get some detail wrong, but I believe like the 1977 All-Star banners aren't there for Canadian, the autographs get moved, the cropping can be different, but I think there are also a lot of players, and it may mostly be Expos and Blue Jays, the Canadian teams, where the pose is completely different as well. And so, yeah, so I would say among people who consider themselves mostly collectors of US baseball cards, the certain O-Pee-Chee years are of the most interest because there's something different, you know, besides just French translations on the back, right? It's a different pose or something unique. And so there's certain years where there was a lot of that, and there's certain years where there's almost none of that.
1937 O-Pee-Chee, those are die cut, where kind of like the old batter up cards where you actually can fold the card, punch out the player, and the player will stand up.
Exactly.
It's not worth as much if you've done that already, but they're better all flat. But it was an interesting set.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for correcting. I think I had said 36, but 37 is correct. Yes.
Yeah, I collected the like 1980, 81 NBA cards, and they were little trifold ones. And one of them is Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, and
Dr. J.
Dr. J.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, the regrets. Oh, the regrets. So that is still one of the most tragic things, because I still have the cards, and every now and then they'll have like a move, and what's in this box? You know, you open it up, and right there's liver of Magic Johnson. You just go, oh my God. I just literally, what would you like to do with that $10,000 bill?
I have a couple questions there, if you don't mind.
Get in there, Keith.
A little while ago, I was doing some research and found, I think General Mills doing Jello cards with Roger Craig and all those, and they seem to appear and then disappear. Have you done an index on what, I guess, Wheaties and General Foods, or is it General Mills? I guess General Mills.
Yeah, General Mills.
Has anyone done an index on what they've actually done, or who they've actually made cards of? Because I know there are a lot of Lou Gehrig. And then as a follow-up, then I'll mute myself, is I was looking at trying to find stuff on the 1935 Wheaties All-Americans. And supposedly you submitted your box top of Wheaties, and that's how the team got, or that's how certain members of the team got selected. But did anyone ever make any, did Wheaties ever announce who won and make a box cover or a card or anything from that?
Oh man. Okay, so let me do this. I put a link in the chat to tcdb.com, which stands for Trading Card Database, right? One of my go-tos. I'm not going to say it's the most authoritative. It's kind of a crowdsourced operation, but it's pretty darn good. Trading Card Database, you can go in and you can type in like, you know, Jello or 1962 Post or something like that, and you can pretty much bring up the checklist, and it even has images of every single card, right? Now, if you go too far back and we're talking about sets with a lot of rarities, there might not be a picture of every single thing, but it's pretty cool. So that tends to be my go-to. Now, in terms of the Wheaties boxes, it's interesting. I was just looking the other day. This was somebody who surprised me that he was on the front of a Wheaties box. I think it was the front, maybe it was the back, but Lon Warnicki, right? umpire, but pitcher also, in the 1930s. He got a Wheaties box, and it even had, this testimonial about how much he loved eating Wheaties. I didn't know that there was a promotion or a vote or anything like that. So that's something I'll want to learn about. If there's anybody who knows about it or wants to research it with enough detail to just sort of put something out, that would be awesome to have on the blog. It's not something I know about or have come across. So I'll leave it there. I think though, Keith, you might have had a second question. You may be on mute though. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I guess I looked up TCDB, and so we'll take a look at that. I guess the other question is, which you might have mentioned, when I was collecting cards, I only did it for 1 year and got kind of disgusted with the whole thing because I kept on getting nothing but Cleveland Indians.
Okay.
And I grew up in New Jersey, and our best friend's father actually had a tryout with the Yankees. So, if it wasn't Yankees, we didn't want it. And all it seemed was Cleveland Indians and guys who used to play for the Yankees that got banished to Cleveland.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And that's when the Yankees really weren't that good. It was late 70s, early 70s, right before Yankee Stadium got renovated, or those infamous years at Shea, which we don't need to repeat. Did Topps have a formula on how many cards they made of each guy, and then for each market, or is that just like did they send too many guys from Cleveland to New York, and then if you wanted to collect, let's say, Mets guys, you had to live in Kansas City or something like that, or anything like that you know of?
It's a good question. I think in terms of the flagship set, the main set of baseball cards each year, the one with 600, 700 cards in it, I don't believe there was anything other than random, in terms of what went to different regions. I don't think they did any kind of stacking of, okay, let's send a bunch of Dodgers to LA or whatever. I don't think there was any of that. There were certainly, collectibles. Again, this could, fail to meet somebody's definition of a baseball card, but like in the early 80s, I would go get a Slurpee at 7-Eleven, and there'd be little coins on the bottom of the Slurpee with the Magic Motion baseball player. And 7-Eleven had regional sets. And there were certain players like George Brett or Nolan Ryan who might be in the sets of a lot of different regions. But let's say you were, you wanted Chet Lemon, you better be in the Great Lakes region or you're not going to get a Chet Lemon, similar for Dusty Baker. I could get that in Southern Cal, but somebody in New York couldn't get the Dusty Baker coin. But as far as the major top sets went, I really don't think there was any manipulation of the distribution of cards. I will say, because you brought up Cleveland and New York, later this year, I think it's expected in the fall, a documentary is supposed to hit called War on the Diamond, and it recounts something that I didn't actually know existed, which was essentially it's the history of the Yankees-Indians rivalry. So I didn't really know there was one. I thought it was, here's the Yankees and here's everybody else hates the Yankees if they're not a Yankees fan, but evidently there's enough that's sort of special for Cleveland and New York that a documentary is coming, War on the Diamond. So you'll be able to relate to that with your 1971 Topps packs.
Well, yeah, that's good. Yeah, because when I was growing up, the Red Sox were more irrelevant, and the whole thing with the Indians goes all the way back to Joe DiMaggio losing his hitting streak in Cleveland.
Oh yeah, and I know one of the things.
And then it was at 48 when the Indians won 111 and the Yankees won like 103.
Yeah.
So I also did a little thing on old timers games. One of the only old timers games that didn't outsell a regular season game was in 48 when the Yankees played the Indians, and actually the old timer game had less attendance than the old timers game. Or the old timers game had less attendance than a regular season Indians game. It's like one of the only times it ever occurred, Yankee Stadium.
Yeah,
so it was a big deal.
Another thing I know, because the folks working on the documentary, it gotten in touch with me to make some glitter cards that maybe would be in the credits or something like that. And so the Carl Mays and Ray Chapman episode, right? Not intentional by any means, but that was something as well, that here were the Indians that were this, you know, better team. And then it probably not cause and effect. I don't know. I guess I'll wait and see the documentary. You know, of course, Babe Ruth came to the Yankees too, but you know, the Indians kind of were all downhill after that, and the Yankees, you know, just you know, turned into a total dynasty. So yeah, there are some interesting episodes in history, and I'm interested to see the documentary to see to what extent, like, you know, it's a rivalry in the minds of fans, or just kind of a history with a lot of common touch points. So yeah.
Your dog has something cornered.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. Our dog loves to bark. You think she was a big dog? She's not at all. But
yeah, that's why I had to jump. I had a small dog downstairs going crazy. Yeah. I was like, yeah, going on down there. Any other immediate questions, Bob? Anyone? Then we'll do Howard's quiz, because I don't want to keep everybody all day. But I want to say the prize for Howard's quiz, I was talking to Jason, and Jason is going to make us a custom card for the winner of this. Is Francis still here? Yes.
Yeah.
So Francis, you can get a custom baseball card. Now y'all saw the one of Bob Dernier and Ryan Sandberg, right? So do you have the Walker Buehler one on hand, Jason? A picture of that? Screenshot of it?
You know what? I don't think that I brought. Let's see. You know what I'm gonna do?
So people could see what one of them looks like. Yeah. So
I'm gonna skip some stuff here. Got some sound effects here. Yeah, so I'll just show a couple of pages. I just did a few things just to give people an idea of what stuff looks like. The first two are two of my more involved ones. Some of you might recognize the kind of rainbow colors behind Glenn Burke were actually the top and bottom borders of 1989 Donruss Commons. Some of you may remember the 1973 tops Steve Garvey. He's kind of photobombed by Wes Parker's butt on the card. So it's my least favorite Garvey card, and he's one of my favorite players. So I kind of redid that. But another series I have is Bo Knows. And so, of course, Bo Jackson's in the Bo Knows, but there's Venezuelan edition featuring Bo Diaz. And I made this for Bo's son, Bo Diaz Jr. And then the third in the series, Bo Biden. The back is a father-son picture of Joe and Bo. So a little play on the Bo Knows. Another fun series I did was Dave Parker Career Retrospective. It looks at his 6 teams, you know, starting as a superstar with the Pirates and ending with a little remembered episode where he actually played for the Blue Jays. That's my Cobra Out card. And sort of a fun thing that happened, by the way, I'll make a plug here. Dave Jordan and Dave Parker just published the biography Cobra this past week. It's out. You can get it. It's awesome. I'm like 10 chapters in. But I sent Dave Jordan a card of Cobra that I made, and he went to hang out with Dave Parker, and Dave Parker is actually there. Cobra is holding up one of my cards, and then it's a little harder to see, but Cobra has a clock on the wall at his house that features a lot of his baseball cards, and he actually took down one of the cards from his clock and put mine up. So that's the pinnacle of Heavy J Studios, is having a card on Dave Parker's clock. This was one I did before the MLB announcement by several months. And it was just a pitch that in my mind, the Negro League's records and statistics were, you know, to me, just as real and valid as anything else. And so I did a play on the early Gowdy cards of the 30s with Records Are Real, Big Leaguer for Josh Gibson, and a little play on here's the band NWA that was with Ruthless Records. And so, you know, the Negro League records in some sense are Ruthless Records. Bad pun perhaps, but.
Oh, that's a good pun. That is nice. Records,
be legit borrowing from an NWA song. So anyways, yeah, so no cause and effect once again, but it was very gratifying to me when MLB made the announcement. I was like, sweet, I already have my cards out. This is one that I love because I'm a lifelong Dodger fan. So this is one that means a lot to me. Topps put out a what they call the Stadium Series late last year. Just cards of 5 classic ballparks drawn by an artist named Eric Friedensen, who goes by the name of F. Dot. And as soon as I saw his card, I was like, oh man, I think I could do cool stuff. And so I took his card. I bought a 5-pack, and I've subsequently bought a bunch more on eBay. And I've taken some of my favorite Dodger memories and I've turned them into these little cards, with glitter and cut up baseball cards. And in the case of Vin Scully, a friend who's an artist in LA drew a Vin Scully for me to use for Vin Scully's final broadcast. This is where we're at. I've raised 15,000, and these are the groups. So just to give folks a sense of the style, I didn't bring the Walker Buehler today, but
it didn't have to be the Walker Buehler. I just saw that one. That's why I brought it up.
Yeah. So it's a mix of styles, and if somebody says, "Hey, I like the one with the hostage ransom note lettering," can you do it that way? Sure. One of my styles, I don't have a picture of it here, but I do a lot with the 1933 Gaudi because I love the set so much. So I do a lot of modern players recast in the 1933 Gaudi design with
and the Walker
glitter. So yeah, I got you covered.
So the Walker Buehler one, for those of you who haven't seen it, it's kind of a bobblehead one. So it's like it's like a card, like you took a card that was a picture of his face and you put it on a card that was an action picture. So his head is giant on the action picture.
I'm gonna go get it. It's
like, a really, really cool card. So Howard, the pressure is on. Of course, we can make arrangements to get one of you too, because I know you need more stuff in your collection. Hello, Howard.
Yep, I'm here.
Very exciting. So now the pressure's on the trivia now. Here, hold that Walker Buehler one up.
Yeah, so Chris, so this is a little more the kind of, I call it the heads up design, named after a 1938 Gaudi set, where I take a bigger picture of the guy's head from a different card. So for Buehler, this is actually my April Fool's Day joke. I told my social media followers that Topps had just signed me to do a new series with them of one-of-one cards called Topps Bubble, geared toward today's collector investor. Each would be a one-of-one, and they would come pre-slabbed by PSA as PSA 10s. And so I did the Walker Buehler Topps Bubble, and a lot of people believed it. Of course, it was a joke. Topps, I don't think wants anything to do with me other than for me to buy their stuff. But yeah, so kind of a big head Walker Buehler.
All right. So now we know what the dealio is. All right. Now I can work this out. If you don't want a card of your own, Jason, I'm sure we'll be happy to make one of your favorite player that will work out as the prize. All right.
Anything else?
So without further ado, do you want to take it away, Howard, and do the trivia?
Sure.
Now, if Jason wins, he doesn't have to make anybody. He doesn't have to make the card. We just make the donation. Now, Buck Leonard. Now he's North Carolinian, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think it's called, is it Rocky Mount?
Yes, Rocky Mount. That's right. So we always talk about, you have an Emil Rothe chapter, and everybody names it as who do we want to name ours after? Did it other than myself? We want to have it be something else. And Buck Leonard is always one is a person we talk about.
Yeah.
So that's where we'll make a donation to the Buck Leonard Association for Jason for this prize. All right. So the winner of the trivia here, and we are on the honor system.
Oops,
all right, here we go.
I'm out.
Okay, so hopefully these questions are easier. The honor system is right, but we don't have any rules. I was going to get a first prize of a free beer at the SABR Bulls game, but
they also get that prize. They also get that prize.
I think that's fair. Okay, first question. Rookie.
Easy one. That is an easy one.
Okay, so everybody can write down their answer.
How many questions so I can make it numbers?
There's 10 as usual plus a bonus question.
All right.
Okay, question 2. Captain, oh, captain. Ooh. The
Oh, wait.
title of the question is a hint.
Derek Jeter? All right. Who's the only manager to top the all-time?
He said, I thought this was a giveaway question.
Jeez, you say that all the time.
No, but
all the time.
you're gonna hit yourself in the head when you know the answer.
All right.
Since I gave you the hint. Okay, question 3. In a pinch, who hit the first World Series pinch hit home run? Question 4. Let's go to war. Name the leaders in career war at each position, including DH. So the player had to play at least 2/3 of the game of his game at that position.
So basically 1 point per position right here.
Yes, well, plus there's going to be 10 bonus points if you get all 10.
All right.
And if it's an outfielder, then they had to play most of their games in the 2/3 of the games in the outfield. But the position you put them in is the one they played the most.
Do you want 3 outfielders or just
Yeah,
one?
I want a left fielder, a center fielder, and a right fielder. They have to have played 2/3 of the games in the outfield, and you put them in the position in which they played the most of the 3 outfield positions.
Woo.
Remember, it's career war.
Yep.
Should be very easy to get 6 or 7 points.
Mm-hmm. Very easy.
Oh, come on.
Can't believe no one in this crowd has asked which version of war you used.
We are Sean Foreman. This is a Sean Foreman crowd.
Yeah, I know. This is baseball reference war.
Come on now.
Baseball reference war.
Does it include a pitcher? Does it include the pitcher?
Including a pitcher, yeah. There's 10 positions. I don't think these answers would be different no matter what definition of war you use. Maybe one position.
Okay.
Okay, we ready for the next question?
Nailed it.
I wrote down 10 names. So
Good. Switcher. Who was the first switch hitter elected to the Hall of Fame? This is a medium difficulty question. Okay, should we move on?
Yep.
Number 6, MVP. The Angels in 1982 had 4 hitters who won MVP awards in the 70s. Name them. Okay, let's move on to number 7. I already asked it. I went the wrong.
That's number
button.
5.
I went the wrong way. I pressed the wrong button. Aged homers. Which 2 players share the record for the most home runs, which happens to be 26 by a right-handed hitter in his age 40 season or older. Two players in their 40 or older hit 26 homers. No other players in right-handed hit more than that in a season. Okay, let's go to number 8. 2 crowns. Before 2020, when LeMahieu won the batting title and Luke Voigt, oh my God, won the home run title in the same season. Who Luke Voigt, are you kidding me? That shows you what an abomination last year was. Who were the last teammates to claim batting and home run crowns in the same season? Major League bet, not just league, but Major League. Home run crowns and batting crowns in the same season.
Does it have to be 2 people?
Does it have? Yeah, because they're teammates.
I mean, Barry Bonds was his own teammate.
I mean, otherwise you'd be answering a Triple Crown winner, probably. It's not, it's 2 teammates. One led the majors in batting average and one led in home runs, just like LeMahieu and Voigt did last year. Okay, number 9. Another switcher. Who was the last switch hitter to lead the National League in home runs in a season?
Yeah, this is much easier. Much easier.
No, this one's not easy, but you should have got it, Chris.
Oh, I'm on it. I got a good answer down. I don't know if it's the right answer, but I have a good answer.
Okay, number 10. Ah, what a relief it is. Who is the only pitcher to win 3 games in relief in a single postseason series?
I think I got that one.
Yeah, you better get it.
And
Okay, are we ready to move on to the answers?
no, the bonus.
No, the bonus comes at the end.
All right. So we get to make up. So after somebody thinks they've won, the bonus comes and then they lose.
No,
And we go to the
tough. Suck it up. The bonus question comes last because the answers to the first 10 might give you a hint.
All right.
Okay. Number 1, the Dodgers, everybody knows it, right? The whole way, everybody got that. Twice as many as the Yankees. Captain Hook.
Absolutely. Sparky.
Right. That's why I put the title on it.
Yeah.
Number 3, Yogi Berra hit the pinch at home run.
I had his teammate down.
Yeah, well, he's 47. He was not a starter all the time. Question 4. Garrick, Hornsby, Schmidt, and Wagner.
It's a Gehrig.
Hornsby, Schmidt, and Wagner. There's no surprise there.
Yeah, there is. Hold on, you're going too fast. I gotta go. You gotta go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I gotta piece all this together.
Okay.
He skipped to 3.
First base is Garrett. Second base is Hornsby. Third base is Mike Schmidt. Shortstop is Wagner. Barry Bonds, left field. Willie Mays, center field. Babe Ruth, right field. Johnny Benson, the catcher. Edgar Martinez is the DH. And Walter Johnson is the pitcher.
Did anybody get all 10?
I got 9.
Oh,
I'm surprised that A-Rod did not pass anybody, or it's possible he didn't get to count at either position.
I might have to get kicked out of SABR. I forgot about Babe Ruth.
Yeah.
And Walter Johnson gets it. You remember last time I asked who had for 100 at-bats or more in a season,
Yeah.
who had the all-time highest batting average.
Mhm.
And the reason Walter Johnson is here instead of Cy Young is because of his hitting prowess.
That's Cy Young.
Cy Young, if you did it just on pitching, Cy Young would be in the answer.
Oh
That was the
man,
one that was the one I got wrong.
I put down Morgan. And I forgot about Hornsby. Just completely.
Yeah.
And I had A-Rod, and then I had Cobb instead of Mays.
Yeah. So I don't think Cobb played more games in center field than in left field. But at any rate, this sort, yeah, if you whether you like WAR or not, as a career statistic, it sort of matches up with the
Yes,
classical statistics.
absolutely, absolutely.
Right. Question 5. Frankie Frisch was the first switch hitter.
The Gas House Gang comes through, Mark.
That's a harder question. I probably should have made that a higher number than question 5. Question 6. The MVPs, Don Baylor, Fred Lynn, Rod Carew, and Reggie Jackson.
10.
They were all on the Angels. So you get 2 points for each one. If you got all 4, you get a total of 10 points. Aged homers. Dave Winfield, you might get that. Anybody got Hank Sauer? My hat is tipped to you. They both hit 26 homers in their age 40 season.
Boy, I'm hoping this is a 1995 or 96 question here coming up next.
Hank Aaron and Eddie Matthews.
Willie McGee and Mark McGuire won, but they both got traded, right? So you might want to check that because McGuire led the major leagues in home runs, but did not lead either league in home runs. And Willie McGee led the National League in home runs. I mean, in batting average, but I don't know if he led the American League, but he was in the American League by the end of the season. So that is one. He hit 335, left the league at the trade deadline. So he stopped at 335. And McGuire hit 56 home runs, but he hit like 35 and 31 and 21. So I challenged this question.
Yeah, well.
So I think the year you're talking about, Chris, the major league batting champion was Eddie Murray, who did not win either league's title.
Yeah, like McGuire did.
And I think it's because of the McGee codicil.
All right. Boo. Good question. I like that question.
So that's 5 points each?
Yeah.
What do you mean 5 points each?
No, you have to get both because it's not an answer if you only get one of them. It's 10 points for 2, 0 for 1.
Well, I got 0. So
Knock it up, Keith. Question 9.
Oh, come on. Ken Caminiti didn't lead the league in home runs either year, 95, 96.
Hey, New York Mets.
God.
Man, I wrote down Hojo and then I changed it at the last minute to Todd Hundley. Was he a switch hitter?
No.
No.
God, I don't know why I said that.
Okay.
And it is good to buy it. Howard's a very Ken Burns question.
Okay. Question 10. Chris, tell me you got this one.
I did not get that one.
Oh.
I thought George Frazier won.
Lost.
I did not do very well.
Okay.
His
Here's
last 4 wiped me out. I was doing great till then.
I really thought you'd get the last 2.
I knew it was going to be Darryl Knowles or George Frazier.
Just go back. Question 9 and 10 were each worth 20 points.
Oh.
9 and 10 were each because they were hard, except for Chris.
Who got neither of them?
I know. Okay, the bonus question. which team has the best winning percentage in opening day games?
The Mets.
That's absolutely right.
Yes, it helps when you start Tom Seaver for 10 years.
Well, but you notice that they lost their first 8 opening days. So since then, they're actually 39-12.
Yep. Both Gary Carter and Bobby Bonilla hit like 2 home runs in their debut on opening day with the Mets to win the games. That's pretty great.
Okay, so
I'm gonna have to. Mark Armour probably won this one. It's like maybe because you sounded pretty confident when you started talking about getting that Aaron Matthews one. Whew, that was a hard one.
anybody get 50 points?
Oh, look at that! I got 46.
Nice.
Okay, who raise your hand if you got more than 50?
Joshua did. You put your hand up.
I got
Excellent.
50 I wanna make sure-
Joshua, how many did you get?
57, but I want to make sure that question 1 was 10 point. I may be adding wrong.
Yes. Yeah,
What was question
10 points.
Okay.
I got 54.
Okay,
Oh, very nice.
so that's really good. So Joshua is going to get something really cool from Jason.
Yeah, because he's not coming to a Bulls game.
Well, maybe he is.
That's not fair. I'm not part of your chapter.
Oh my God, Campanella did not lead the league in home runs when he won the MVP. Are you serious?
He led the league in steroids.
Yes, but he hit 40 home runs. I thought he led the league.
I was there. I lived in San Diego for 4 years.
Oh, that was fantastic. That was fantastic. Now, Joshua, so Jason's here, so you could say, this is what I would like as your type of card. So Jason, throw up a series of cards. Throw up a series of the types of cards, and just let him give you a quick. The pressure's on because obviously we can't do it all day, and gotta get the order in. Jason's got to get a dog.
I suggest that you ask him to cut up his 1948 Leaf Jackie Robinson, which I know he has, and say like, that's the
48
card.
Jackie Robinson glitter card.
I got it. The 86 Mets. How can I not? Right?
Okay, 86
But
Mets.
none of your good, and don't worry.
Oh, no. I have so many extras. So I mentioned I do kind of a 33 Gaudy. I'm not good at aiming for the camera. 33 Gaudy style. This is kind of cool. We have a local painter and she gives me her scraps. And so I'll use those as backgrounds sometimes. Let's see. The heads up. Here's Cobra.
Just so you know, anybody, you could go, I don't know if he always does commission work, but as long as you're making a donation to help him reach his target, he's happy to make some.
Yeah, true enough. So so Joshua, all I need is your favorite player, or it can be of yourself, right?
No, gosh, no.
People
I'd
send me
say
wedding photos. It's all
well,
good.
Mookie Wilson. I have to say Mookie Wilson, of course.
Okay, I'm going to do a Mookie. And do you want me to surprise you with the style?
Yeah, or the other, it's funny. My other favorite from that team is Danny Heap, who I think is appreciated as a pinch hitter and backup outfielder too.
Oh,
but if I had to choose one, I have to say Mookie Wilson.
Okay.
And do you have a style you prefer? Do you see those different styles? I love the Walker Buehler one.
What was it? Was that the second one? Or no, wait.
Oh, I don't remember which one was.
Put up your slides. Put up your slides.
Second, like the modern art background.
That's cool too. Why don't you surprise me? I appreciate your creativity. So yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes it just depends what the card is, like what it's going to look good with. So okay.
So the other thing is you have to mail it to him. I assume you are in the directory for SABR and that we can work it out that way.
Or we could wait till you're out here in Oregon, Jason, when we're going to have, see, the thing that Jason didn't tell anyone is that he was here in Eugene in the 90s.
Yep.
For college or a master's degree or something. What was it for school? Master's. And there was a particular a restaurant that had amazing baguettes that I've lived here for, how long have I been here, honey? That's my wife. How long have we been
Almost
here?
13 years.
13 years. I had never been to until Jason, my surprise is I went yesterday or the day before, and I was going to actually send you some pictures from there.
Oh, yeah.
But so maybe, well, either mail it or we can wait till you actually are out here if this damn COVID ever ends, right?
That's
Sure,
really
Jason will
fantastic.
be out here. Jason was out here in, I believe, October
Yeah.
of 2019.
Yep.
And he went to Portland for something else, and I drove up and spent a really cool day in Portland with Jason.
Well, I'll do that too. In Eugene, we're about, for those who don't know, where the U of O is, University of Oregon is, but we're about 2.5 hours south of Portland. But I will drive up to Portland because if anyone goes there, to, you know, because I can't expect people to come to Eugene. But we'll figure it out.
We could meet sort of halfway at that basketball powerhouse known as Corvallis.
Yeah.
I know a guy there. Hey, Mark.
That was pretty great. That was fantastic, Howard. And the best part was the increased stakes. I was certainly sweating, man. 46. I was literally giving it. If I go Howard Johnson, just because if I just say I know nothing about anything except the Mets. Oh, the Mets Twitch hitter, whoever that is, Howard Johnson. I would be sitting here right now getting me a Howard Johnson baseball card. So I outsmarted myself. I think that's going to wrap it up for the day, Jason. You were fantastic. I really appreciate our show. And I tell you what, I can go through more slides. It was really great. I would love to see all that. Jason is going to email me right after this, the links, the key links, the Jason Cards links, the SABR Baseball Card links. I have it already, but if it's in his email, I can copy it here. And if that Einstein one or Newton one is a different link, please include that because I will go over there and read those because I loved it.
I will do it.
The Pursuit of Happiness. That was really fantastic. And we'll share that with everybody. Mark?
Can I step in? I wanted to say something about Jason. I don't think he probably won't be surprised to hear any of this, but I was actually talking to Jason Pomeranke. I don't know if you guys know him. He works in the SABR office, but also is just all over SABR as a researcher and, good dude. And I told him, I don't know, we may have been talking about Jason for some reason. This was last summer. And I said, I have a feeling that someday that my, SABR epitaph will be Mark Armour. He's the guy who got Jason Schwartz into SABR. And I said it to Jacob and I thought he was going to laugh. And he said, yeah, I think that's pretty much true. So I was like, no, you weren't supposed to agree that quickly. And I will also say that occasionally I will call Jason and we've had some really cool conversations, but one of the reasons is because I didn't want him to burn out too quickly because he came into SABR, he immediately was a friend to all, and he is a great contributor and a great writer and he's so inclusive and everything. And I was like, I didn't want him to be like Joe Charbonneau and have a drinking problem and then sort of drop out. So I can say now that he's at least Carlos Baerga, like the 5 all-star seasons. And hopefully, he doesn't get traded to the Mets and have it all wash out. But Jason's a superstar. And I hope you pace yourself and stay in this for 30 years.
Oh, man. I will strive to be a compiler. I maybe someday will go down as the Jamie Moyer of SABR.
That's what we want. That's what we want. We want more Jamie Moyers.
So thank you, Mark. That was I love it. I agree. Our next meeting is going to be on May 8th, Mother's Day weekend. So obviously that's before Mother's Day, that's Sunday. So it'll be 12 to 2:30. I kind of feel bad because all of our meetings are so much longer than everyone else's, partly because we have fantastic guests, partly because we have a fantastic group that loves to talk about it, partly because we have good internal quizzes and our own researchers, Keith being one of them that's really helpful and puts out some great stuff. So thanks everybody for coming, and especially the global aspect. That was really, really good thing to see. Really appreciate Mark coming. Naked Ladies Cigar, Brian coming, Vernona coming from there. That's really nice. I guess you get to see your sister when you she blew us off today. And Joshua, that was really awesome that you go around and hit the chapter meeting. So we really, really appreciate it. And we look forward. If you come out, we'll go. The other thing is, certainly for the local ones, as Howard noted, we will figure out how to go to a game because we're going to get shots. Everybody will be shotted up before July and August, and we'll have a ball game meeting. The only other time Francis took us to one in Greensboro one time. That was like
Yeah,
25
that was a long
years ago.
time ago.
25 or 30 years ago. I know. So thanks again, everyone. Look for something. You'll get an update from me because Jason's going to send me some links. I'm so excited for these for his separate blog, which I don't know about. So that was news to me. I've read all this stuff at the baseball card blog and all this stuff. So a lot of stuff in the baseball card blog. And thank you. Does anybody have anything else they want to chime in and share? Anyone? Going once?
All right. Yeah, I got two things.
All right.
One of them was I was thinking of doing a new research project on automobiles and baseball with a little twist and all that. And kind of it starts with this weird connection of the Spalding Company sold cars called Stevens Duryea cars between 1904 and 1912, or actually World War One. At the same time, the American League gets really heavy into Chalmers, and that's when they have the first Chalmers Award. And I thought it was really interesting how you had these two rivalries going on, the National League and the Spalding Company and Albert Spalding on the north side, or then the west side, and Stevens Duryea and Comiskey and Chalmers, which was a little iffier. But then how that award blows up, it then is voted by the players, but then you have this huge relationship of a certain car maker and baseball's kind of in since the beginning of the 20th century is really being entwined. And I was wondering if anyone else wanted to either join me in this effort or look at submitting a proposal to SABR on automobiles and baseball, looking at this whole scope of things.
That Chalmers thing is a very interesting tie-in.
Yeah, and what I found, which is really interesting, is that the Spalding Company used to advertise Stevens Duryea cars, and it was in it was actually in the showrooms in New York, Philadelphia, and New Jersey. And they were made in Springfield, Massachusetts, across the street from the Spalding factory. And then when the company went broke, that's where they bought that. That's where they make golf balls. And even today, Callaway golf balls are made in the old Stevens, one of the Stevens car plants. So it's kind of interesting that there's a continuity there. And just the whole thing about the Chicago rivalries and how these played out, really looking at 1910. And then, of course, World War I enters and blows all that up. And then you have the White Sox, and that blows up even more. And then you redo everything in the 20s and 30s with corporate advertising and cars. But I know Ford did a lot of stuff that gets kind of ignored before another car company decides to become the official brand of Major League Baseball, or uses Major League Baseball to sell their cars.
You're looking for research.
Yeah, well, it was something that came up that
I mean, obviously, we love having your stuff. So if you get something together, or you don't want help, but definitely we can have you present here. I know sometimes you like to practice before you go to 9 or another conference.
Yeah, well, I'm definitely going to bore you guys with something when I get it together. But I was thinking we could do something a little more sophisticated, because I think there is a request for proposals from chapters on providing information on that.
Yeah,
There's something in the
send me a summary
in the newsletters.
Send me a summary, and I'll send it out not just to us, but I'll send it out more broadly to multiple chapters. And I think you can make a request globally at the site. Maybe the president knows.
Yeah, and then the other thing which has really got me all really fired up,
Yes.
so much so that I ended up sending Scott an email telling him to strap on his baseball socks and make a stand, is I'm really annoyed with the new extra inning rule, and it's got to get changed. It's an abomination, and it's an embarrassment to baseball. And if you really want to kill baseball, what's the best way to do it is you turn it into church league softball in extra innings. And somebody needs to say something besides me, but I'll be more than willing to say as much as I can, but of course I'll get ignored. As John Thorne told me, if I need to give him a nickel because I've used up my Lucy from Peanuts psychiatry moment with him. So it's something that I think SABR needs to say something, or somebody needs to say something, because it's not a good idea. But baseball is famous for not having good ideas, and then realizing that they need to change it and revert back.
I know the newsletter came out, but this is one of the things, pre-game, before the presenter starts, we go into those discussions and have that rant. I did that rant on Thursday night. It really makes me crazy. I don't care for it at all. But I will tell you, I'm really surprised at how many traditional fans are like, whatever. We don't need to play all night. Let's just wrap it up. So it kind of goes away. It is 2:30. We're gonna bounce from there, but we're gonna pick that one up, Keith. We're gonna pick that one up because that's obviously gonna get worse as the season goes on, as more and more. I thought we weren't doing it, so I was surprised in the first game I saw of the season, the Yankees game, go that way.
Well, once you have things. I mean, the pitcher who lost the game had 3 strikeouts and he gave up a double, but it was an earned run, and the guy who scored the run was the second base guy, and so all of a sudden the box score is corrupted. You have a guy who scores a run without an at bat, without even a hit, and it's an unearned run, and so all of a sudden at the end of the year you're not going to have the zero-sum box score of earned runs and runs, and it's not going to match up, and it's gonna get worse as time goes on, even though it's a real small percentage of games actually go that way. But it's gonna, you're gonna have to put a giant asterisk by this season too, for the same reason of last year. Just because all of a sudden things don't balance. If you look at the box score, is zero sum. Whatever the pitcher does, the batter does. They add up, they cancel each other out. Now they will never. There'll always be a difference.
Yep. And that is one of the hard parts of it. No, don't worry, Howard. Sorry, Howard. Don't worry, Keith. We all go on these rants, and so what we'll have to do is we'll have to have a separate call, a separate part of the meeting to go on what are you doing? I do the same thing about the designated hitter, though. So, I kind of go into that, but we'll do that. Thanks everybody for coming. Y'all all have a great one, and we'll see you in a month. Keith, work up some arguments with us, and send me your idea about it, and we'll work together to get the national group to work on that research, contribute to your research program. All right? Everyone have a great Saturday. Thank you very much for being here. It was great meeting all the new guys. Appreciate it very much. Thank you for doing it. Tell Elena we missed her. All right. Bye-bye.